I'm Emma. I was a wife for 40 years and a mother for 37. But 3 days after burying my husband, I became nothing more than an inconvenience in my daughter's eyes. The morning it happened, I was still moving like a ghost through the house we'd built together. Robert's toothbrush was still on the bathroom sink. His favorite coffee mug sat clean on the drying rack. I hadn't touched his closet. I couldn't. Amanda arrived without calling. Tyler followed close behind, carrying a pair of suitcases I didn't recognize. She barely looked at me when she said they'd made a decision. Tyler had a job opportunity in the city. The house was too big for me now. It made more sense for them to move in. I remember staring at them, not really understanding. It wasn't a request, it was a declaration. Amanda said I could take a few days to find somewhere else to stay, but they needed me out by the weekend. She used the word transition, like this was some gentle, natural process, but it felt like being erased. I had hosted Amanda's birthdays in this living room, nursed Robert through the flu in this kitchen, and folded countless loads of laundry in this basement. I had spent my life maintaining a home that was suddenly no longer mine. When I asked what Robert's will had said, Amanda told me not to worry. She said everything had been taken care of, that I didn't need to concern myself with the details. She used a voice reserved for talking to children or the elderly. I was both in that moment. Tyler handed me a list of retirement communities printed from the internet. Amanda told me they were lovely places, social activities, group dinners, no stairs. She said I'd have more independence, but it felt like she was locking me away. It felt like she was dumping me into a bin labeled done. She called it their house. Not once did she say, your home or mom's place. Just our house. That word stung worse than any insult. Our. Like I had never been part of it. Like 4 decades of my life had vanished. The moment Robert's heart stopped beating, they watched me pack. Amanda sat on the edge of the couch, scrolling through her phone. Tyler tapped away on his laptop. No one offered to help. No one asked if I was okay. They just waited. I fit my life into 2 old suitcases and a grocery bag of photographs. My wedding album. A few letters. Robert's cologne bottle, still half full. I couldn't take the furniture. I wasn't allowed to touch the art on the walls or the jewelry in the safe. Amanda said she'd sort through it later. She handed me a crisp envelope with $200 in cash, said it would help me get started. As if she were tipping a server. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. When I stepped outside, Tyler was already standing by the car with the trunk open. He didn't say a word. He just gestured toward the bags like I was a guest overstaying my welcome. The ride to the motel was silent. I stared out the window, watching my home grow smaller in the rearview mirror. My reflection stared back. Widow, mother, baggage. That's what I had become to them, just baggage. The Sunset Lodge charged $49 a night and smelled like stale cigarettes and bleach. The carpet was stiff, the mattress sagged in the middle, and the towels were so thin I could see through them. But it was all I could afford with the $100 Amanda handed me like a tip. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wallpaper peeling behind the lamp. There was no kitchen, just a microwave and a mini fridge that hummed too loudly. The air conditioning unit rattled every few minutes like it was trying to give up. I hadn't eaten since morning. There was a vending machine by the ice machine, so I bought a bag of peanuts and a bottle of water. It felt humiliating, breaking a $20 bill just to buy dinner. I could hear the couple next door arguing through the walls. The silence inside me was louder. I tried to sleep, but kept waking up from dreams where Robert was still alive. He would be sitting in his chair, sipping tea, flipping through the paper. I'd tell him Amanda had thrown me out, and he'd look at me like I'd lost my mind. He would say she'd never do that. But she had. The next morning, I stood by the motel window, watching strangers come and go from their cars. I looked down at my phone, wondering if Amanda would call. She didn't. Tyler didn't either. I realized with an ache in my chest that they didn't see me as their problem anymore. Still, something didn't sit right. Robert had always been precise, maybe even obsessive, about our finances. He kept folders in alphabetical order, He had fireproof safes. He double-checked insurance premiums every 6 months. He'd shown me the will once, years ago, sitting right at the kitchen table after dinner. He had made it clear I was supposed to inherit everything, not in a controlling way. He just wanted me to be secure. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. He used to joke that Amanda and Tyler didn't need handouts. They had ambition. He believed in fairness, not favoritism. But Amanda claimed the will left everything to her. She said it was her house now. Her money? Her decision? I wanted to believe her, but the words kept replaying in my head. Sharp and cruel. Find somewhere else to die. Robert would have never used those words. He would have never allowed them to be said, unless he changed his mind before he died. Unless something happened I didn't know about. But deep down, I knew Robert better than anyone. He loved Amanda, but he didn't trust her with money. He'd said so more than once. He'd shake his head at her impulsive shopping sprees, or the way she let Tyler handle everything without question. That night, I opened my suitcase and pulled out the folder of papers I'd taken from the bedroom drawer before leaving. I didn't even know why I grabbed it. Maybe habit, maybe instinct. It had Robert's handwriting on the tabs. Tax returns, property deeds, investment statements. But one folder was missing. The one labeled Will and Trust. It took me half a day to find the number. Mr. Halliday had been Robert's attorney for years. The man we trusted for our home purchase, taxes, and estate planning. I remembered the building on Eastwood Drive, tucked between a bakery and a dry cleaner, the same office where Robert and I signed our first will together in our 30s. The receptionist looked surprised when I walked in. She asked if I had an appointment. I didn't. I didn't even have a plan. I just told her my name and said I needed to speak with Mr. Halliday about my husband's will. She disappeared into the back, and a minute later, I heard a chair scrape. Then the door opened, and there he was, older than I remembered, with more gray in his beard and a slower walk, but the same warm eyes. He stopped when he saw me and said he'd been wondering when I'd show up. He asked if everything was all right, and I could only shake my head. I told him Amanda said Robert left everything to her. His brow furrowed. Then he asked, gently, if I'd received my copy of the will. When I said no, he went still. He motioned me into his office and closed the door behind us. The room smelled like paper and lemon oil. He opened a cabinet, pulled out a thick manila folder, and placed it on the table. He said there had been a reading. Amanda had told him I was too emotional to attend, too overwhelmed, that she would handle everything. The folder had Robert's name on it. Inside was the original will, notarized and signed, just 6 months before his heart attack. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Mr. Halliday read aloud, his voice steady, formal. To my beloved wife, Emma Grace Harper, I leave our primary residence at 217 Willow Lane, along with all furnishings, personal effects, and 70% of all financial assets. 70%. I gripped the edge of the desk. To my daughter, Amanda Rose Harper, I leave 20% of my financial assets to be held in trust until her 35th birthday, contingent upon her respectful treatment of her mother following my death. Contingent. He said the word like it was carved in stone. I blinked, barely hearing the rest. Robert had known. Somehow, he had seen what Amanda might do. He'd tried to protect me, and Amanda had lied about everything. She hadn't just stolen my home, she had stolen my grief and buried it beneath paperwork I was never meant to see. Mr. Halliday looked at me with concern and asked if I was all right. I wasn't. I was furious. I stood up too fast and had to catch myself on the desk. I asked if Amanda's name had been removed from the accounts yet. He said not yet, but that could change immediately once I presented myself as the rightful executor and beneficiary. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Amanda hadn't inherited a thing. And now, because of her cruelty, she had violated the condition that gave her access to the trust. She'd thrown me out of my own home, and in doing so, had thrown away her inheritance. The irony was perfect. She hadn't just disrespected me, she'd destroyed herself. I told Mr. Halliday I wanted to file a formal fraud report. He nodded and said he'd already started a file. He had suspected something was wrong when Amanda didn't let him speak to me directly, but without my appearance, his hands had been tied. Until now. He asked if I wanted to call the police. I said yes. And then, with shaking fingers, I signed the authorization papers. Ownership of the estate would return to me within 48 hours. All of Amanda's accounts linked to the trust would be frozen pending investigation. It didn't feel like justice. Not yet. But it felt like the beginning of it. I walked out of that office different. Not angry, not grieving, focused, clear. Amanda had wanted to erase me from my own life, but instead, she'd written her own downfall into the very document she thought she'd buried. And now, it was my turn to act. By the next morning, Mr. Halliday had already contacted the probate court, filed a formal fraud complaint, and submitted the necessary orders to freeze Amanda's access to the estate. He also looped in a local detective who specialized in financial elder abuse. It all moved faster than I expected, like a machine that had been waiting for the right push to start running. I signed more documents at the bank that afternoon. Within hours, Amanda's access to the trust was locked. The house utilities, which she'd transferred into her name, were reversed. Every account, every credit card linked to the estate, declined. At 3:12 p.m., my phone rang. Amanda. I stared at the screen for a moment, before answering. Her voice was tight, panicked. She said something was wrong with the bank. Her cards weren't working. She asked if I knew anything. I told her I was sitting in Mr. Halliday's office. The silence that followed stretched long and hard. Then she asked what I thought I was doing. She said I was being irrational. I told her I was finally thinking clearly for the first time in weeks. She tried to play the concerned daughter again. Said there had been a misunderstanding, that she only wanted to help. I reminded her that she told me to find somewhere else to die. I reminded her that kindness wasn't her motive. Greed was. Then, Tyler called. His voice was calmer, but I could hear the edge in it. He asked if this could be handled quietly. I said no. He said lawsuits could be messy. I told him jail time was messier. They underestimated me. They always had. For years, I was the silent one, the housekeeper, the peacemaker. I balanced the books while they bragged about investments. I stretched leftovers while they dined in places with dress codes. But now the silence had ended. Emma, the grieving widow, the baggage, the burden, she didn't exist anymore. Now I was the executor of the estate, the legal owner of the house, the woman who held the power they thought they had stolen. And I was just getting started. Amanda was arrested 2 weeks later while having lunch at a country club she could no longer afford. She was still wearing designer sunglasses when the officers walked her out in handcuffs. The charges were clear: fraud, forgery, financial elder abuse. Tyler didn't last much longer. A forensic accountant traced his involvement to false documents and suspicious transfers tied to shell companies. They added conspiracy and laundering to his list. His office fired him before the indictment was even public. I didn't go to the hearings. Mr. Halliday updated me on the court. He said Amanda didn't speak much. She looked tired, worn down, the way someone looks when the mask finally slips and they have nothing left to hold it in place. 3 days after her sentencing, I got the first letter. It came in a plain envelope. No return address. The handwriting was still hers. Neat. Controlled. Just like the girl I raised. Inside, she told me she was sorry, that she'd made a mistake, that prison had opened her eyes. I didn't respond. Another came a week later, then another. They piled up in a drawer I didn't open. Each one is a reminder of the choice she made, of the words she spoke to me, without blinking, of the bags. She watched me carry them out the door. There was a time I would have rushed to forgive her, made excuses, blamed stress, said we were family, and family always works it out. But not this time. This time, Amanda wasn't just my daughter. She was a woman who committed crimes against someone she was supposed to protect. And Tyler wasn't just my son-in-law. He was a man who saw weakness and exploited it. I mourned them, but not in the way I mourned Robert. I mourned who they could have been, who I thought they were. That grief was quieter, colder, heavier, in its own way. The justice system did what it needed to do. Amanda got 16 months. Tyler got 24. They both claimed remorse. They both begged for privacy. But some debts go beyond prison time. Some wounds cut too deep to be stitched with apologies. The first thing I did when I stepped back into my house was breathe. A deep, steady breath. No one was watching. No one was waiting. It was just me and the silence. And for the first time in a long time, the silence felt like mine. The walls still held the echoes of a family that had come undone. But I didn't want to erase the past. I wanted to rebuild around it. I started small. New curtains. New paint. I chose warm grays and soft golds. Light filled the rooms again. I had spent 40 years decorating for someone else's comfort. Picking furniture, Robert liked. Making choices, Amanda would approve of. This time, I bought a bright red armchair just because I wanted it. It clashed with everything, and I loved it. I knocked down the wall between the kitchen and the dining room. Added a skylight in the hallway. I didn't ask for opinions. I didn't wait for permission. Every nail I hammered into the wall felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I didn't know I'd given away. Neighbors stopped by to check in. They brought flowers, pies, and soft apologies. Some of them admitted they'd wondered about Amanda's version of the story. I thanked them politely but didn't linger. This chapter wasn't about looking back. It was about stepping forward. The money Robert left me was more than enough to live comfortably. But I didn't want to just live. I wanted to give that comfort to women who needed it. I founded a nonprofit called Willow Circle, a place for older women pushed aside by their families. Women who needed temporary housing, legal support, or just someone to say they mattered. We started with a single apartment unit, then 2, then 5. Donations followed. So did volunteers, retired nurses, teachers, widows like me, women who had been called baggage and had finally decided they weren't. Each woman who walked through our doors reminded me why I kept going. They weren't just stories. They were me in different bodies, different names. But the same betrayal, the same quiet strength that refused to be buried. People started asking me to speak. Churches, community centers, once, even a university. They wanted to hear how a woman like me had fought back. I always started the same way. I lost everything I thought I needed. And then, I found myself. There were days I missed Robert. Days I wished things could have been different. But grief doesn't have to keep you still. It can move you, push you into places you never imagined you'd go. And in this new life, in this quiet house filled with color and light, I finally felt free. The letter came folded neatly in an envelope, with a return address this time. Amanda was out on parole and wanted to meet. She said it wouldn't take long. She said she wanted to talk as mother and daughter, just once. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, turning the envelope in my hands. There was no fear, no hesitation, only a deep, steady quiet inside me. I had rebuilt my life, brick by brick. I wasn't about to let old ghosts walk back in through the front door. Still, I agreed to meet her. In public, at a small cafe by the library, where no one would interrupt. She arrived first, wearing a simple sweater and jeans, hair pulled back, face older than I remembered. Regret will do that to a person. She stood when I walked in. I didn't smile. We sat without touching. She started talking quickly, nervously, like someone afraid the moment would vanish if she paused too long. She said she was sorry, that prison changed her, that she missed me, that her kids asked about their grandmother. She said she wanted them to know where they came from, that she wanted to make things right. I let her speak. Then I told her the truth. I said I didn't hate her, I didn't wish her harm, but forgiveness wasn't something I owed, It was something she had to live without. Because what she broke wasn't a dish, or a rule, or a promise. She broke me. She threw me away when I needed her most. She lied, stole, pretended like I didn't exist. And some bridges, once burned, don't get rebuilt. Some scars don't fade. Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly, like part of her knew this was coming. She said she understood. I believed her. But I still stood up. I still walked away. Outside, the sun was setting low behind the trees. The air was cool. I pulled my coat tighter around my shoulders and kept walking. Not because I was angry, not because I was cold, but because I had already chosen peace. And peace meant never going back. Forgiveness is a choice, but so is protection, and no one has the right to demand one at the cost of the other.